looks dusty because it's so dried out. Hello! Today I am taking my ranunculus and anemone corms out of storage and I'm going to start pre-sprouting them. I also want to talk about reusing potting soil or potting mix because I do that all the time and I've just realized there's a few things you want to keep an eye out for when you're doing it. So I'll walk you through sort of what I think about and what I add to my old soil mix to use it again. So I got this going already. It's a big block of like compressed coco coir, and this I'm going to be adding into my old potting soil just to bulk it up. Coco coir has no nutritional value, but honestly when you're doing things like seed starting and, you know, pre-sprouting from your corms or tubers, you don't really need a lot of nutrients in the soil. Like the corms and the tubers and the seeds have a lot of the starting energy that a plant needs to germinate, to get their first sets of leaves going. And honestly, when you look at, you know, soil mixes, potting soil mixes, volume-wise, the majority of what's in there is just for like texture. Most of the material in there doesn't really have nutritional value for the plants, but they do have good like physical qualities that lets that mix retain water, that lets it aerate, that, you know, doesn't keep it from getting too waterlogged, which is never good for your plant. So things like peat moss or coco coir, they're usually what is the bulk of your potting mix. And just to be economical about that, because those things don't really have nutritional value. They're literally just there to hold moisture so that your roots don't dry out, to give some structure to that potting mix. And those things for sure should and can be reused as often as you can, especially because peat moss is like a non-renewable resource. I don't know so much about it, but I know that I'd rather save money on not having to buy those things again and again when I have them already and I can reuse them. The things that you should watch out for are the nutrient content. Again, like for the beginning stages of when you're seed starting or pre-sprouting your tubers or bulbs, you don't need a lot of nutritional value. In fact, it's great not to use like a mix that has a lot of fertilizer in it because you could burn your little seedlings. What you also want to keep an eye out is, did your plants that were in that potting mix last season, if you used it last season, did they have any like severe fungal issues? Sometimes what people do, if they had plants that did have like these big problems or, you know, soil-borne pests or things that they just don't want to deal with again, they'll just straight up bake their potting soil to reuse it. And when you bake it, you kill off like all of the living things in there. So all of the disease that might be hiding in there, like the fungal disease or any of the pest eggs or things like that. You'll kill them off. You'll make it totally like, yeah, a blank canvas kind of for new life to develop in. And that also brings me to the next point of what you want to just consider when you're reusing potting soil is like a big part of soil health and what makes like a potting mix healthy is the microbial content within it. So let me show you, this is just my big thing of like potting mix that I am reusing. I have a few other like pots that I'm going to empty out into this just to get more of it. But like it's just been in here all winter and it's really dried out. So all of the microbial like content, all of the like good fungus like mycorrhizal fungi that was initially in this potting mix, this like high quality promix that I'm reusing, it's not really there anymore. Again, for things like seed start, it doesn't matter so much in the beginning, but if you really want to maintain the health of your plants, if you're growing it solely in that reused mix, you do kind of want to add in new like beneficial microbial and fungal life into your soil. What I would do in that case is maybe not even for seed starting, I wouldn't do it, but I would just make sure to amend it as I'm potting up those seedlings. I would add in like a slow release organic fertilizer. Those often come with like microbial content in it, beneficial microbes in it, especially things like espoma, the biotone or the garden tone or the plant tone. Those are good. Also worm castings, they're great. You can add them in even when you're seed starting, even into a mix that you're going to use for seed starting, because it's not super harsh. It has nutritional value. It has great microbes and that sort of thing inside of it. But it's really not going to burn your seedlings, especially if you're not adding so much, if you just add a little bit. And I think that this is what I will do, just to make sure I'm not burning my seedlings. I am not really going to add any fertilizer amendments to the potting soil I'm reusing, but I am going to start fertilizing the seedlings just as soon as they have like a couple of true leaves. So that's not the first couple of leaves that show up when you're sprouting a seedling. Those are the cotyledons, and those actually have all the energy from the seed to start to grow that seedling. But when you get the first set of true leaves. For the corms, like my ranunculus and anemone corms, yeah, I can just like wait a little while anyways also for that, because a lot of that energy is stored within those corms, within the tubers or whatnot, the bulbs that you're using. So you can just wait a little while until it starts sprouting, until it starts to grow, until you add that like liquid fertilizer, until you start watering it with liquid fertilizer. And a lot of liquid fertilizers, at least the ones that I use and choose, are organic, and they do contain microbes as well. As always, you should not be fertilizing your seedlings, even when they do have true leaves, with the amount that's really recommended on your fertilizer. You should like half that, or maybe even a quarter that, just until they get a little bit stronger, those seedlings, because you can burn them even if you don't have a lot of nutrients in the soil already. Just adding a lot of fertilizer all at once can sometimes be harmful to your plant. So just start out like low and slow with the fertilizer, and then just like gradually ramp it up. Okay, I'm just breaking up some of these I had a bunch of extra oregano in pots that ended up drying out. I just wasn't taking care of it over the winter. Oh, it's dusty because it's so dried out. And some other things. This was a snapdragon, and I can see like how much roots were just spread all throughout this, so I'm sure a lot of the nutritional value has been like taken from this. I mean, honestly, some of the roots are fine to keep in there as well, but I'm gonna throw those in the compost, and I'm really just looking for, the peat moss and the perlite, that kind of stuff. So the perlite is another like component of this mix, of a lot of indoor potting mixes or seed starting mixes, that is no nutritional value. It doesn't like get worse from one year to another. It's just there for its porosity, for it being able to keep the soil aerated. So all that I'd like to reuse. Things like perlite aren't super, you don't need it so much when you're planting in the ground outside. In raised bed mixes, you kind of do want to have like a little bit of something like a little bit more structure to it to give some like aeration to your soil. But a lot of the things I plant like in the ground in my hoop house and outside, so the perlite isn't really needed there. So if I'm putting this in the compost, then I'm not really utilizing the perlite for what it's good for, because that compost ends up going on top of the ground anyways where I plant. I mean, it's not a bad thing to have perlite in your ground, so don't feel like you can't put that in there. It's fine. It's just more useful when you're starting things in containers. And this as well, it's an old rosemary that dried out. I just really wasn't taking care of a lot of plants this winter. It's so dusty. And then yeah, just the remaining of the plant and the root ball I'll just chuck in the compost. And then to bulk it up, especially because I know I'm using mix right now that's going to be just for my corms, my ranunculus and anemone corms, and they don't need a lot of nutritional value, I'm going to add coco coir. Coco coir is like good renewable sort of structure that you can add to your mixes. No nutritional value again. It does like retain moisture really well. And I think it's not bad for like aeration as well, for making sure you can keep oxygen in your soil, in your mix. It's not really a soil. This is a potting mix that I'm making, or that I'm reusing as well. Okay, this is what, I don't know how well you can see. This is what my mix looks like now. A lot of that dry reused promix, adding in some of the the wet coco coir. Something else, this has a lot of perlite in it. If it didn't have so much, like if I maybe used less of that promix and a lot more of this coco coir, I would add what I have on hand, which is vermiculite. And vermiculite is good for both like aerating the soil, but also keep retaining moisture because it's very porous material. I'd be adding some of that in as well, but I think it's good. I think it'll be fine. Okay, so I have the potting mix ready. Something I should have done earlier was start soaking my corms. So I just have a little container of water. It might not be enough. I might have to get another one. And I'm just gonna, add in just like my dried clumps into it. A lot of flower farmers who do this, and you'll see on YouTube, if you're looking for how to pre-sprout your corms, your ranunculus or anemone corms, they'll do this in 5-gallon buckets because they just have so many corms that it makes sense to do it in that amount of volume. And they'll have like a little air stone going through, so something that's bubbling air, just to keep the water moving so it doesn't go anaerobic, so you just have a lot of oxygen available in the water. And that helps the corms not to rot because you'll be keeping these in the water for a few hours. But I don't need to have an air stone going. This container I'm using is shallow. I'll use other shallow containers as well to get this going. And something deep like a 5-gallon bucket, you'll need to just be moving the water around so it has a lot of like surface area with the air. And I think for starting my corms, I'm like a month behind schedule of where I was last year. If y'all don't know, I live in Alaska and our season is really late. So this might seem super late for you to start like pre-sprouting your corms, but I think it's a good time for me still. I think I put it in earlier than I needed to last year, and they still survived and they did fine and they did really well, like growing throughout the season in the early spring. But I think they kind of stalled a little bit because it was too cold. So I think I can put them in a little bit later in the ground in the hoop house and they'll grow just the same. I'll get blooms at the same time. Okay, this is getting super crowded, so I think I'm gonna get another shallow container full of water, get the rest of those corms soaking, and I will check in with you once they're ready. Okay, it's been a little over 2 hours. I just started cleaning up, like rinsing out some of the ranunculus corms. I did about half of it. Some of them still soaking, but I figured I would just show you how I'm potting it up, or like getting them pre-sprouted before it gets too late. So I just have a 10-20 tray. I put the potting mix that I just made with the reused, the old promix that I had from last year. I put some down at the bottom. I'm just gonna use the water from this to get it a little bit wet. And because there's no like drainage on these trays, I am just gonna try my best not to water it too deeply, to have just water staying stagnant at the bottom of these trays. I will add a little vermiculite actually, just because I don't want to have to water it too often. So this will just help things from drying out. And I'll just mix it in. Now you don't have to like rinse out your ranunculus corms like I did. I just wanted to see how it all looked. I wanted to count them and I wanted to separate a bunch. And you also don't have to separate your ranunculus corms. So sometimes when they're like growing a new corm, you know, they're multiplying, they'll just be bunched and close together, and you'll probably like break some of their arms off when you're separating them. So you really don't have to, especially if they're small. Like they can grow together like that just fine. And when they're bigger and when it's like not so big of a deal if they lose a couple of those limbs, then you can separate them out if you want to. Oh, I did also find some worm eggs in my corms. I think, yeah, they must have just been there. I wonder how they're still okay after they've dried out so much. I guess worm eggs can survive that. And that'll be interesting to see if I get some worms in this tray while they're pre-sprouting, which honestly is not a bad thing. So really easy how you pre-sprout it. I'm just gonna start laying these corms out. The arms and legs, their little tentacle tuber-like things, they go down, they face down. And I'm doing them quite close together because they're not going to be in these trays for very long at all, which is also why it's fine that I'm reusing old potting mix, that this mix doesn't have a lot of nutrients in it. I will be fertilizing them because I want them to grow really quick, but they have a lot of energy in these corms to start growing, and yeah, I just want to get them out pretty quickly. Hopefully things warm up and I get the space ready in the hoop house soon enough. I have a bunch of tiny ones that like came apart from the bigger ones. I don't know if they're all viable. I think at least a few of them are, but I'll just plant them anyways. Yeah, some of them I don't know if they're just like arms that fell off or if they're like whole corms, but we'll see. Here's one anemone corm. It honestly just looks like a rock. If I didn't see this grow last year, I might think it was just a rock that was in my compost or something. Actually, I might put all the anemones separate on a different tray because it looks like I'll be needing more than one tray for the rest of my corms. And yeah, it's getting late. I'm not going to bother separating all of them or even cleaning all of them off. I'm just going to give them a quick rinse. And then I sort of press them into the potting soil because I don't want there to be like a big air gap. I'll put the mix on top of it as well and water it in enough to where I would hope that it like goes and fills in all the like little crevices and the air pockets, but I also press it down just to hopefully minimize that as much as I can. Okay, so I have about like 54 corms that I fit into here. I have a bunch more, not as much as this, but I have a little bit more that I'll just fit into a smaller tray. But for now, I just want to take more of this potting mix and cover it up. Just loosely packing the potting soil mixture like on top of and around the corms. And I'm just gonna lightly water it. Really, this is just to push some of this potting mix like underneath and around the corms so that there's no big air pockets. Again, the mix was already moist, so I don't want to, or it's already had some water in it, so I don't want to like waterlog this tray. Maybe that's enough. I did want to also show you, here's some of the plants that I sowed in one of my recent videos before I left to California for a couple of weeks. And I did use pretty much only like reused potting soil from last year, and I just want to show you, like, some of these leaves are a little bit white. Like this plant in particular is pretty white and pale. These are honestly, yeah, pretty pale anyways, even though they're green compared to what they normally are. I already got some of them potted up from these 2 cells, and they're looking a lot better. So they're looking a little bit better. I think, you know, it was a multitude of things as to why these aren't looking so healthy. I'm sure once I pot them up, they'll be doing better, and give them a little bit of fertilizer. I think it is, like, you know, there's a lot in one cell. This is old reused potting soil, so there's probably not a lot of nutrients. They already have like a few true leaves on them. Also, there's a lot of algae on this, and that's because I had the dome over it for the whole 2.5 weeks that I was gone, or like a little over 2 weeks that I was gone. And I think that just caused a lot of algae to grow. It was under like really intense light. It was very close to the light. So the algae is also kind of sucking up nutrients from the potting mix, which goes to show that there is some nutrients in there. There's just not a lot. And when you have a bunch of seedlings and algae competing for those resources in a mix where it's already pretty low, that's not the most ideal for them. So I'll get them potted up, I'll get them fertilized, and hopefully it'll all be better. But I just wanted to show you that as just something to look out for when you are reusing your potting soil. I have to be a bit more mindful this year of fertilizing everything, because I reuse potting soil like every year. So even though, like, this is from last year, but it might have included, you know, potting soil from the year before that too. Truly, in Alaska, at least for a lot of the shops that I go to, there's not even normal potting mix, the normal potting mix that I buy, available, even because it's so early in the winter. People aren't typically starting their things yet. I want to get a head start on a lot of things just because I am selling at the farmer's market, and I want things to be like big and nice before I do get them out there, like available for people to buy. It saves them time, gives them a head start on this like short growing season that we have. So I'm starting things earlier than a lot of people here. So yeah, the potting mix isn't even available to me. I can order online, but there's always like high shipping fees when I'm shipping anything to Alaska. Anyways, was there anything else that I wanted to mention? I don't know. It's getting late. I do want to get to the rest of these tonight. I also have been watching, like, not rewatching, I'm just watching one of the old seasons of The Bachelorette, and I kind of want to get back to that. I just want to be doing some chores and watching TV. So I'll just leave this video at that. Hope you guys do reuse your potting soil. If you haven't been already, I encourage you to do so. It's very easy. It's like recycling, you know, you're reusing these resources. It's not just like one and done. It'll save a bunch of money if you just like keep an eye on your plants and see what they need and give them what they need, and just know that you will probably have to like add more nutrients to it, which you can do anyways, which I do anyways, you know, with fertilizer, liquid fertilizer. Then everything will be all right. So that I'm gonna move on to some other chores. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.